Hi everyone, my name is Migo, and I am your digital host. And today, I'm going to share with everyone an overview of the Safety Ambassador Program. One of our goals throughout this training program is to encourage an environment where you feel comfortable talking with your supervisor about any safety concerns. This in turn will help everyone go home at the end of the day injury-free. Safety is more than just knowing how to properly do your assigned tasks. It involves being able to think clearly and focus on the task at hand. Problems in your personal or work life can have an impact on your ability to focus and can increase the likelihood of an accident. Because of this, we will also discuss some general workplace skills and personal well-being topics. Remember, this training should not stay in this room, but rather it needs to ultimately be taken with you into your worksite and put to good use. Knowledge is power. We are almost done with this introduction. But first, we want to let you know that each day in the Safety Ambassador Program will consist of a typical 8-hour time period and will include all the needed breaks for lunch or otherwise. Your supervisor should have already advised you of these times, and if not, please make a note to ask your supervisor when these times are scheduled. With that said, welcome to the Safety Ambassador Program.
Stay tuned for the following shows on the SAP Network.
The film you are about to see represents a significant breakthrough in the advancing science of the motion picture. Safety-minded. Safety-minded. Mind. Set. Mind. Set.
It doesn't matter what industry you're in, because let's face it, when you're being unsafe, tragedy can occur in 1 second or less, no matter where you are. We hear way too often, it'll only take a second. Ever really stop and think how long a second is? A lot can happen in just 1 second. Like what? Well, let's take a look at the velocity of a bullet. A .22 rimfire cartridge, which has a very small powder charge, sends its bullets on their way between 370 meters a second and 460 meters a second. Pretty crazy, huh? Sound travels through the air at the speed of sound, which is 33.3 meters a second in dry air at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 1,087 feet per second. A hummingbird flaps its wings up to 70 times per second. Shoot, that's nothing compared to a wasp. A wasp beats its wings 117 to 247 times a second. In a matter of 1 second or less, your whole life can change. We see on a daily occurrence employees just like you and me that are willing to push the envelope, not really understanding the consequences that are usually at stake. A lot can be lost in the matter of a second. Let's review some scenarios of workplace incidents that occurred because a second was 1 second too long. August 2012. An employee was drawing a chemical from a chemical tote. The tote was located on the tines of a forklift and was in a lifted position on the forklift. As he drew the chemicals, the tote slipped from the tines and struck him. The weight of the tote crushed his chest and caused asphyxiation. The employee was killed. All it takes is a second. Everyone assumes I'll be able to move quick enough if it happens to fall. November 2012. Employee number 1 and 3 field workers, along with 1 supervisor, were putting in posts. The posts were to be installed across 2 dirt roads to block an entrance into an 11-acre ranch, and from which a chain would be placed to hang a sign. The employees had completed digging the first post hole, which was approximately 16 inches round and 28 inches deep, and started digging the next post hole. A tractor with an auger attachment was used to excavate the post holes. As they worked, they had difficulty pushing down on the 3 sides of the auger to help get it started in the dirt. Employee number 1's sweatshirt became entangled in the unguarded PTO shaft of the auger, which pulled him into the rotating part of the machine. He sustained traumatic injuries that killed him. All it takes is a second. There are no second chances. 3 other workers were there and none of them noticed loose clothing. Take care of one another. The employee probably assumed if clothing were to get caught, it would just rip off. October 2012. Employee number 1 asked a coworker to help him start an old pickup truck that would not start. The employee sprayed an ether-based starter fluid into the truck's carburetor, while his coworker sat in the truck's cab working the starter. When the truck would not start, employee number 1 suggested pouring gasoline into the carburetor. The gasoline exploded into a fireball that burned his shirt, the side of his face, his ears, shoulders, and arms. He was transported to an area hospital where he was treated for 2nd and 3rd degree burns. Be sure you're properly trained to work on vehicles. Employee number 1 assumed that if there was an emergency, he would be able to move away from the hazard quick enough if needed. October 2011. An employee was removing trash from the warehouse using a forklift. He ran off the dock and was ejected from the seat. He was not wearing a seatbelt, but had it fastened behind him. The forklift cage landed on top of his chest, crushing his rib cage and sternum. He was pronounced dead shortly after the arrival of the emergency medical services. Rule of thumb: if the forklift was manufactured with a seatbelt, it must be worn. The operator assumed that he would be able to clear the forklift in the event of a rollover. January 2011. An employee was cleaning a pasta extractor. He needed to reach his arm inside the mixing hopper to unjam the machine, so he decided to bypass its safety lid interlock by making it inoperable. However, the machine was still running as he reached into the machine. The rotating parts caught his arm. The tines in the mixing hopper ripped through his forearm, breaking it. The company did not have a lockout-tagout program while cleaning the machines. The employee was transported to the medical center, where he received treatment and was hospitalized. Be sure to properly train the employees exposed to hazardous equipment with lockout-tagout procedures. He assumed that he would be quick enough to react if his arm was getting close to the tines. March 2008. A lineman received a call to bypass a faulty meter at a residence. He went to the house and disconnected the incoming power before removing the meter and installing a temporary bypass in place of the meter. He then went back up in the aerial lift and restored the power by reattaching the 2 lines. He was electrocuted when he contacted the 2 connections with his bare hands. It is believed that he contacted the wires as he was pushing them away from the bucket before descending. He was not wearing insulated gloves, insulated sleeves, or fall protection at the time of the accident, and he was working alone. All it takes is a second. The lineman probably assumed that the hard part of the job was done. Now it is the small stuff. Don't need to waste time for PPE. May 2004. An employee removed a stuck cardboard tray that was discharged from a folding machine. The cardboard trays were used for packaging strawberries. The machine had a guard with plastic sliding doors and was interlocked to stop the machine when the door was open. The cardboard trays got stuck in the machine on an average of 1 hour. The employee was able to open the plastic door in the opposite direction to bypass the interlock. As the machine was running, he put his hand into the machine to clear a tray. He caught his left pinky finger in a 2.5-inch diameter chain and sprocket. The finger was amputated to the first joint. The employee was trained to stop the machine before clearing out the trays. The employee had enough time to open the plastic door in the opposite direction to bypass the interlock, assuming he would be quick enough to clear a tray. Many injuries occur due to the fact that we as humans are always willing to push the envelope. We can't count how many times we have heard the excuse, "I've done it a million times this way, and that never happened until..." But as you can see, it does happen, and continues to happen as a daily occurrence. Don't become a statistic. Just because it does not happen at your workplace does not mean that it can never happen. Let's take a look at some of the smallest infractions, such as bypassing guards, that have cost a serious price. February 2011. An employee was at a tree trimming job at a residential house, using a wood chipper to chip small diameter branches. The chipper's discharge chute clogged up. While attempting to unclog the chute, the employee removed the pin that held the access guard panel down over the chipper wheel. The chipper wheel had not come to a complete stop and was still rotating. The chipper wheel weighed 1,500 pounds, and when in operation, it rotated at 3,000 rounds per minute. While he was moving the guard, it came into contact with the chipper wheel. The guard was knocked off its hinges and struck him, and landed 20 yards away from the machine. He was hit in the face and forehead with the access guard panel. Another employee told the resident to call 911. An ambulance was sent to the location. He was transported to the local hospital, where he died. The other employee on site at the time was on the opposite side of the wood chipper machine and did not see the event. The employee assumed that just because the power was shut off, the chipper wheel would not be rotating as fast as it was, allowing him to correct the deficiency. So whether you're in a hurry, or you just feel that there's no need to put back on the guard or your PPE because it will only take a second, remember what you've heard and seen in this video. Take the time and do it correctly, so you can get a second chance. If not, you, your family, or your friends could regret it for the rest of their lives, even if it is only for that 1 second.
So what you need to learn today is that we'll be talking about all the
Honest gossip, la 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 la. Honest gossip, honest gossip, la 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 la, la 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 la.
forest gossip.
Tree friends, guess what I just heard? It's called Escherichia coli, also known as E. coli.
Is this another one of those internet things like email or e-learning or e-communication? Because I don't even know what I'm talking about.
What are you talking about? What is anybody talking about?
It's a bacteria commonly found in the lower intestines of warm-blooded organisms.
That's disgusting! Why do you keep coming around here to tell us terrible things like this?
Yeah, and that's not even what I was thinking about at all.
Infections start when you swallow tiny, usually invisible, amounts of human or animal feces. Unfortunately, this happens a lot more than humans even would like to think about.
Dude, this is just nasty.
Well, I don't want to be a part of this conversation.
Well, there's good E. coli and bad E. coli. If you catch a virulent strain of E. coli, that's the bad one. It can cause gastroenteritis, urinary tract infections, and neonatal meningitis. You'll feel severe abdominal cramps, diarrhea that will turn bloody within 24 hours, sometimes fever, and in rare cases, it can cause tissue death of the lower intestines. Basically, it's not good for your tummy.
Ah! My only consolation is I have no internal organs.
I don't want to catch that, dude. Sounds terrible. How can I avoid it?
Well, Happy, to prevent the infection, always wash your hands before and after cooking, keep food refrigerated or frozen, avoid raw meat and poultry, avoid cross-contamination of food.
Oh, good thing I'm a vegetarian. Actually, I'm vegan. Do I even eat?
Well, the best way to treat E. coli infection is to keep well hydrated with fluids and electrolytes. The use of antibiotics has been shown to shorten the course of the illness.
Ooh, Grumpy, antibiotics are those, little robots I was telling you about. Or maybe they were antibiotics? I can't remember.
Would somebody just cut me down already? I don't want to be here anymore.
Glad there's no livestock here in the forest. I'm going on a strict carrot diet.
You've had a bad day and nothing's going right. You've had a bad day. You'll be glad for bed until the morning light, when it starts again, the 9 to 5 mundane. You can't wait for the end. You've had a bad day.
Can you believe back in the day all you needed to report an emergency is pick up the phone? The telephone operator would answer and then ask, "What number would you like to be connected to?" Then the caller might say, "Get me the police." Or, "I would like to report a fire." Or, "I need an ambulance or a doctor." Until dial service came into use, one could not place calls without operator assistance. Have any idea how it all started? The push for the development of a nationwide American emergency telephone number came in 1957. No kidding. This occurred when the National Association of Fire Chiefs recommended that a single number be used for reporting fires. Then, in 1967, the President's Commission of Law Enforcement and Administration Justice recommended the creation of a single number that could be used nationwide for emergencies. In 1968, the Federal Communications Commission and AT&T chose to implement a concept with its unique emergency number, 911, which was brief, easy to remember, dialed easily, and worked well with the phone systems in place at the same time. Generally speaking, people are aware that they should call 911 in an emergency, but they are less aware of the circumstances in which they should not call 911. The result is that many calls to 911 do not involve true emergencies, which creates a burden on the system. Times have changed. 911 is not a number to call up to find out what time or day it is. Or is it a phone number to contact to find out what the weather is going to be like so they can help you decide whether you will be wearing pants or shorts? Sounds crazy that we need to go over this, but calls like this are still being made. Call 911 only to report a life-threatening situation requiring police, medical, or fire emergency assistance. Do not call 911 unnecessarily. 911 lines must be kept open for the people with true emergencies. So let's discuss first when to call 911. Call 911 to get help for someone who is hurt. For example, if someone falls and is seriously injured, or if you see someone is hurt in an accident, if you see someone acting suspiciously or stealing, or breaking into a home or building, if you smell smoke, or you see a fire, if you see people fighting and hurting each other, if you see someone being robbed or beaten. If you believe emergency assistance may be needed but are not sure, call 911 and describe the situation. If you call 911 by accident, don't hang up. Explain what happened to the 911 operator. It's a good idea to know the address and phone number you are calling from in case you are calling from a cell phone. The 911 operator must know exactly where you are and how to reach you. The police, firefighters, or ambulance crew needs to know where you are to provide help for the emergency. It's important to make sure you are safe before you call 911. If your home or workplace is on fire, for instance, leave the facility before calling 911. You can always call from someone else's workplace or cell phone. When not to call 911. In the event of a natural disaster or emergency, minimize your calls to 911 unless it is a life-threatening, police, medical, or fire emergency. The following guide should help you determine when it is appropriate to call 911 in a disaster. Never call 911 as a joke. 911, what is the nature of your emergency?
I'm trying to reach 911, but my phone does not have an 11 on it.
This is 911.
I thought you just said it was 911?
Yes, ma'am. 911 and 911 are the same thing.
Honey, I may be old, but I'm not stupid.
Never call 911 as a joke or just to see what might happen. When the emergency dispatcher has to take the time to talk to people who don't have a real emergency, other people who call and do need help right away might have to wait. And oh, by the way, when you call 911, the operator can tell where you're calling from. Never call 911 to ask for information. 911, what is your emergency?
Hi, is this the police?
This is 911. Do you need police assistance?
Well, I do not know who to call. Do you know how to cook a turkey? I've never cooked one before.
Never call 911 just to see if it is working. 911, what is your emergency?
Oh, nothing. Just making sure the lines are working.
Stay off the telephone unless you have a critical need to make a telephone call. 911, what is your emergency?
Nothing. Just really bored.
Do not call 911 unless you need emergency response from police, fire, or emergency medical personnel. A lady was having a problem getting her meal from a fast food restaurant, so she calls 911 3 times within a few minutes to complain. The 911 dispatcher sent a police officer to the restaurant, and the lady was arrested for misuse of emergency lines. If you experience other types of problems not related to these emergency services, call the appropriate telephone number for those services. 911, what is your emergency?
I was wondering, does the fire department put snow chains on their trucks?
Yes, sir. Do you have an emergency?
Well, I have spent the last 4 hours trying to put these chains on my tires, and well, do you think the fire department could come over and help me?
Help you what?
Help me get these chains on my car.
Here are some other emergency phone tips. If you pick up your telephone to make a call and do not hear a dial tone, do not hang up. Simply wait a few seconds and then you will get a dial tone and will be able to make your call. Do you have an out-of-area contact? In an emergency, local phone lines could be jammed. Try calling a friend or a relative long distance and you should be able to get through. You and your family can use the out-of-area contact to leave messages for each other and you can let people know that you're okay. Know what to say when you call 911. Tell the person what is wrong. Tell the person your name, address, and telephone number. Do not hang up until they tell you that you should. They may have to ask you more questions. 911, what is the address of your emergency? 911, what is the nature of your emergency?
Hello?
Yes, this is 911. Can I help you?
No, you have the wrong number.
You may feel scared or nervous if you have to call 911. That is okay. The emergency operators who answer the phone talk to a lot of people who are nervous and worried when they call. Remember, just stay as calm as you can. If you talk too fast, the operator may have trouble understanding what's wrong and the kind of help you need. So, speak slowly and clearly when you explain what's happening. Got kids? Teach your children the correct use of 911. Parents should use the information we are reviewing to talk to their children about how and when to use 911. Knowing the right thing to do can save lives. Talk to your children and discuss when they should call 911. If they are not sure whether there's a real emergency and there are no adults around, it's a good idea to make the call. They could save someone's life. Many fast-thinking kids have called 911 to get help for someone. One 9-year-old boy called 911 when his mother was having a seizure. Help arrived and his mother is fine now. Keep the phone lines clear during emergencies. During emergencies, telephone services become overloaded. You can help keep service available for those who need it most by only making calls that are critical. Limit fax machine and computer use as well. Their use also ties up phone lines. 911 fire emergency.
My power is out.
Yes, sir, we are aware of that. Do you have an emergency?
I just want to know if I'm going to be getting a rebate for the length of time I'm without power.
No, sir. You won't be charged for the electricity you didn't use.
Well, that is more like it.
Emergencies don't happen very often, but when they do, you want to get help fast. In the United States and Canada, dialing 911 on your phone is the fastest way you can get help for yourself or someone else. Don't hang up. If you have to call 911 in an emergency, be sure to stay on the phone. Don't hang up until the 911 dispatcher tells you it's okay to do so. That way, you can be sure that the operator has all the information to get help to you fast. Remember, the dispatcher's questions are important to get the right kind of help to you quickly. Be prepared to follow any instructions the dispatcher gives you. Many 911 centers can tell you exactly what you need to do to help in an emergency until help arrives, such as providing step-by-step instructions to aid someone who is choking, or needs first aid, or CPR. Once again, do not hang up until the dispatcher instructs you to. If you dial 911 by mistake, or if a child in your home or workplace dials 911 when no emergency exists, do not hang up. That could make 911 officials think that an emergency exists, and possibly send responders to your location. Instead, simply explain to the dispatcher what happened. We hope that you enjoyed this training video. Thank you, and be safe.
My brain explode!
Today is a fun topic. Wait, fun for who? We're talking about zombies. Zombie stories have been found all over the world, including Europe, Asia, North America, Africa, and the Middle East, although Haiti has been the source of modern zombie stories. At first, zombies were the result of a mystical event caused by a cursed person dying and returning as a zombie. Later on, turning into a zombie would be known as the result of a viral infection or exposure to radiation. Now, the first time the English word zombie was recorded was in 1819 in a history of Brazil by the poet Robert Southey. A zombie is an animated corpse that feeds off living human flesh and is a word of African origin. The first zombie movie ever made was in 1932, the American film White Zombie. It was also the first horror movie that was not a silent film. But are zombies even possible? If we look at scientific evidence, we conclude that there's several diseases that exhibit zombie-like symptoms, and the CDC, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, has a zombie preparedness page with a zombie blog and posters, zombie education, and even a graphic novel teaching the importance of preparedness against a zombie pandemic. The symptoms would begin with pain and discoloration at location of the entry point of the virus with immediate clotting of the wound. The person would then get high fever, experience dementia, maybe they'd vomit, pain in the joints, and eventually get paralyzed in the lower body, go into a coma, and die before reanimating. As strange as this all seems, scientifically, the possibility of zombies isn't even really that far-fetched. It would, however, be much easier to control the pandemic, which is why zombie movies usually start with a zombie apocalypse already taken place. Also, according to the movies, you would need to get bitten or scratched by a zombie to become infected. If you did get infected, you would have less than 24 hours before turning into a zombie yourself. But really, could there be a zombie apocalypse? Well, I'm going to give you 5 reasons why a zombie takeover is really very unlikely to happen. Number 1, biting. That's a terrible way to spread disease. For thousands and millions of people to become infected, it means that the virus would have to travel from one person to person without being stopped or any authority taking action at all. The reason the flu virus do so well in spreading is because it flows through the air unnoticeably. Number 2, zombies have too many natural predators, birds, and insects that would eat their body parts and speed up the decomposition of their flesh. Number 3, their flesh won't stop rotting, and eventually the heat and the decomposition will cause their bodies to simply fall apart, making them unable to move. Number 4, they would kill themselves by falling off cliffs, running into lakes and rivers, since they lack any coordination and are slow-moving humans. Number 5, any zombie that survived all of this would have to deal with millions of living humans who are willing to shoot, chop, pop any zombie in order to survive. Now, some movies have pushed the idea of zombies to a whole new level, allowing them to run and even jump. While those make it for a more intense movie experience, it isn't really very accurate to the science of a real zombie. So, if there is a zombie pandemic, you don't really need to worry about a real zombie, because hey, you could just outrun them. Just saying.
Hello and welcome. I know many of you employees know this all too well, or so you think you do. Time and time again, accidents are happening, injuries are occurring, and in the meantime, there are numerous facilities that are not really getting the whole picture. Until, of course, it's too late. By then, we end up hearing the whole bit about OSHA or your state enforcement agency being all too picky and just wanting to dip their hands in your company's pocket, which eventually ends up in yours. Oh, how the government always tends to go after the small employers and leave the big companies alone. Aw man, if I had a nickel for each time I heard that. We're here to see if we can make some sense of all this. What we ended up doing was breaking it down to simple, ordinary, basic math. So, no need for a college degree in trigonometry. And I know I just heard a couple of you saying, good, because there's not a chance in HE double hockey sticks that I'm going to go back to school and get one. Believe me when I say, I'm in total agreement with you. But all you have to do is listen to the story we're about to tell you and just look at the numbers. We think they will make you want to provide a workplace free from recognized hazards and also ensure that all requirements are also being followed. Now, I'm not even going to dip into the actual citation amounts if you get caught doing something you shouldn't be doing. Again, this is only reviewing the cost of the accident, not the violation. So, are you ready to be amazed? Then let us begin. How do those stories start out? Oh yeah. Once upon a time, in a far-off land, there was an employer who had a pretty good business doing what he loved doing. Let's say his name is Sean. Sean owns and runs a framing contractor outfit. Sean was the best framing contractor in the whole town of Safesville. Stick with me now, I'm winging it if you can't tell. Now their standard industrial code is 1751. They have a risk classification of 51000, wood frame building, construction or alterations, NOC, not covered by another classification. Sean has 12 employees. His carpenters are paid $20 an hour. But since this is supposed to be a real story, let's multiply the $20 per hour by 130% to cover the overhead. Now, that comes out to $26 per hour per employee. Sean needs to have someone wrangle up these employees and make sure they are doing what needs to be done. So let's get him a site supervisor and pay them $30 per hour. More responsibility means more pay, right? Alright, again, since this is a real story, let's multiply the $30 by 130% for overhead, and that will now come to $39 per hour. Last but not least, Sean must have a clerical person on staff. We'll say $12.50 per hour. Multiply the $12.50 per hour by 130% and you have $16.25 per hour. Now, although these are numbers that we see quite often, now is not the time to ask for a raise going off our numbers. This is the wrong video module to use, especially if you're not being safe. Alright, back to our story. One day there was a mishap involving the tip over of a rough terrain forklift. There was damage to the forklift, but it was covered by the insurance. The pit operator was injured, which caused 5 days of time loss, which is the average amount of time loss for this industry. Some materials that were being lifted were damaged during the tip over, which required some replacement. The structure that was under construction was also damaged in the tip over incident, and labor was required to repair it. Let's take a look at the direct costs in the year the incident took place. These are the costs that can be measured. Damage to the forklift. They needed to rent a wrecker to recover the forklift. That was $375. The service call by the rental agency was $125. Parts and labor to repair the forklift, $12,500. Rental of another forklift to replace the forklift that was damaged, $4,400. The amount that was covered by the insurance was $15,400. That leaves $2,000 that was not covered. Now they also had to spend time on reacting to and cleaning up from the mishap, so that was 3 hours of the supervisor's time, equaling $117. 3 hours each for 2 employees, it's $156, and 4 hours for the injured employee for the balance of the day. That's $104. That all adds up to $377. The material that was damaged needed to be replaced, and that cost $120, as well as an hour of employees' time, which, $26 an hour there, so $146 to replace the damaged material. And the structure that was under construction was also damaged, so that took some time to repair. That took 2 employees 4 hours to finish, and their time totaled up to $208. On top of that, we have the clerical work on claims forms, insurance paperwork, etc. That's 4 hours of clerical work, and that totals $65. And of course, they couldn't just stop the job just because they're down a forklift driver, so they had to train another forklift driver, and that took an 8-hour day at $208, plus the course fee of $90, totaling $298. So our total direct cost from this accident is $3,094. This case also includes 2 categories of costs known as hidden costs and indirect costs. Hidden costs can be such things as your company's reputation for reliability or on-time completion, or the morale and loyalty of the employees, etc. We didn't factor these hidden costs into the figures in this example. Now, what about indirect costs? Indirect costs are such things as the ripple effect on the construction schedule, possible non-completion clause or performance penalty, administrative paperwork, reduced efficiency of the crew with one person missing, hiring and training a replacement worker, reduce productivity of the worker upon return. Depending on who is doing the measuring and what industry they're analyzing, the total indirect costs averages between 1.2 and 4.5 times measurable costs. I used the lowest multiplier, 1.2. So if our total direct cost was $3,094 and we're multiplying it by 1.2, our total indirect cost is $3,713. So our total out-of-pocket costs in the year this accident happened is $6,807. In order to maintain a 7% profit margin and stay in business, Sean's company now needs to bring an additional $97,240 in gross revenue to make up for the $6,807 loss due to the accident. But that's not the end of it. This incident and the resulting time loss from the injury will continue to impact the company's profitability for the next few years. The increase in industrial insurance premiums. The effect of a time loss claim is predictable. Industrial insurance premiums are based on a company's risk class, experience factor, and number of employees. Time loss claims increase the experience factor, where a business stands in relation to others in its risk class. As the experience factor goes up, the company's premiums go up. A time loss claim will affect the company's rates for 3 years. Since it is difficult to predict what the exact rate of a particular risk class will be in any future year, the figures in this example were based on the rates announced for 2006. In this example, a company with 12 employees and an experience factor of 1.0 would have paid an annual industrial premium of $60,724. After experiencing a time loss of only 5 days, its experience factor would have gone up to 1.05, and its industrial insurance premium would have gone up to $63,902. That's an increase of $3,196 each year for 3 consecutive years. So the total cost of the accident in this case, in the year the accident happened, the cost was $6,807, and the revenue needed to maintain a 7% profit margin is $97,240. In the second, third, and fourth year, the increased insurance cost was $3,196, so for each of those years, they needed an additional profit of $45,657. So when we total it all up, that is $16,395 just for this one incident. And that means that the company had to bring in an extra $234,211 just to stay at the same place they would have been had they not had the accident. In business, it's true that time is money. What this math exercise tries to demonstrate is that an investment of your time and effort into safety can have a very large payoff in money. For those employers and employees who still don't get it, I look forward to hearing next year's excuse on how the government is after you. Until then, be safe and have a good day.
We hope you found this hour entertaining, informative, and relevant. Thank you for watching and stay safe.